Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I've recently bought myself a new voice and it is the VEVOR 4.5 inch metalworking voice. So in this video I'll be doing a quick unboxing, testing and a review of this voice and also showing you how I installed it to my workbench. I recently bought this VEVOR engineer's voice or metalworking voice, and this is the 4.5 inch or 115mm version. It comes in a couple of other sizes too. And going by the description, I've got a bit of information to share. So it has an anvil with a swivel base. The swivel base rotates 240 degrees and locks in position. And it also has a pipe vise, and it can clamp pipe from 1.5 centimeters up to 4.5 centimeters. And the vise weighs 4.6 kilos or around 10 pounds. In the box you get some instructions. There's 4 nuts and bolts to attach it to the workbench. The length of the bolts is around 55mm. Bear that in mind. You might have a nice thick bench and these might not be long enough for it, but in general I think these should fit just fine on most workbenches. And then you get the vise itself. So when installing this vise you need to take into account the thickness of this base on the vise here and the thickness of the nut, and that leaves you with only around 3 centimeters of area. So if your bench is thicker than 3 centimeters, then these bolts might not be long enough. Now let's take a closer look at the vise. It has VEVOR stamped on the side of it and also 4.5, so you always know what size it is. It's got like an orange coated base here, which is quite thick, which is nice to see. Some of the very cheap vices have a very thin base here. This one's quite thick. Here is the lock lever to lock it into position. And it can be swiveled like so and then locked into place. It has an anvil here. Here is the anvil. It's a generous size for a vise of this size. Let's quickly measure it. The width is around 43mm and the length is just under 50mm, so between 49 and 50mm. The jaws here, and they are replaceable too. They have replaceable little nuts in here. We'll take a closer look at that now. As you can see here, there's 2 holes with screw heads for replacing these jaws. So they're metal jaws and they've got like a texture on them for grip. And the jaw width is exactly 4.5 inches as stated, or 115mm. Let's see how much the jaws open. Nice and smooth to open them. Doesn't take too long to get quite far open, as you can see. Okay, so around here is about the maximum, and that gives you about 8.5 centimeters or 85mm, which is plenty of capacity for a vise of this size. So then, first impressions of this vise, very good in my opinion. It's got a nice handle on it, it's quite thick and long, ideal for clamping down on metal. Jaws are nice and wide and they've got that texture for grip, and they're replaceable, which is great. The anvil is a generous size considering the size of the vise. It's got a unique look, the grey and the orange, and a unique design as well with the branding stamped in here. So it doesn't feel like one of those generic cheap vices that could be made by anyone that doesn't have any branding. This seems unique, it's got a unique look to it, and it's got the swivel and the lock here. Everything looks really good. I'm quite impressed with it so far. So the next thing to do is to get it installed onto the Workbench. So now it's time to install it to the bench. The black nuts and bolts are the ones provided, and there's nothing wrong with them, but I'm going to be using my own for this, which are very similar, but I just prefer the look of the tops of the heads. So nothing wrong with the ones you get with it, but I'll be using these ones for the installation. If you've never installed a metal working vice before, or if you're just not too sure on how to do it, I've got it set up here so you can see what's going on. So in this case, the head here is integrated, so it's not a nut, it's attached on top, so it's sort of a washer and a nut in one. If you're using a standard bolt with the bolt head on it, you might want to put a washer under here to allow pressure to distribute evenly around the metal casting, and then you want the length of the bolt to go all the way through the desk, and then to add a nut and a washer at the bottom here, like so, and that will go tight up against the bottom of your workbench. I've added some extra plywood here to thicken up the workbench in this area, just to give it more stability. So you might want to do that if you've got a very thin bench. So when positioning the vice, you want to get it on a corner so that you've got usability on the end of the corner of the desk and in front, and even on the other side too. And you want to get the vice positioned as close to the edge as you can without compromising on support. So you don't want the edges here to go over the end, you don't want anything hanging over the end of the bench, but you want to get it as close sort of to the corner as you can. So I'm just going to position mine now, and then I'll show you how it looks, and I'll explain why you want to get it as close to the edge as you can. There's a reason for that. Now, just to show why you want the vice to be nice and close to the edge of the workbench, if you can imagine, if you're clamping up something long, I've just got this screwdriver clamped up here and it wants to go down, if you've got this too far back into the bench, it's going to foul the bench. You want it to be able to come down and through. This vice doesn't seem to have the ability, if it's perfectly square on at like 90 degrees to the bench, to be able to completely clear the end of the bench even when these are right at the edge. But that's okay, because you can just turn it slightly and then you've got clearance, as you can see here, for long pieces. I have the vice where I want it now, and I'm just using a speed square, running it along the edge of the desk to make sure that this is all square and in line. It doesn't really matter because this swivels anyway, but you can also use a tape measure if you want to get it nice and square and accurate. And then where you've got it where you want it, I'm just using a black pen to make some circles. So now I can move the vice out the way and drill the clearance holes for the bolts. First I'm going to use an awl just to mark them centre points, and that gives the drill a guide to follow. So you want to use a drill bit with the diameter equal to or slightly bigger than the diameter of the shaft of the bolt. So now I can lift the vice back into position over those holes and drop in the bolts. So now I can add the washers and the bolts. So here is the vice all installed, and it's nice and smooth. It tightens up nicely. As you can see, one finger. The swivel locks down nice and tight with quite a generously long lever here. Let's just check out the jaws. I'll put something small in there to see if it grips. A small washer. And I'll just bend it over. Really nice and secure, works perfectly. Now let's try the little anvil, and let's flatten that washer again. And now it's as good as new. So the anvil works pretty good. And this also has a pipe vise, so I've got a bit of metal pipe here. The pipe vise is just below the jaws here. And there you go. If you want to cut a piece of pipe to length, that's now nice and secure. You can chop that, no problem at all. Saves you having to mess around getting it in these jaws, although it does work just as well probably in these jaws too. But for peace of mind, the pipe jaws are like rounded, and they've got teeth suited for round objects and holds it nice and secure. The swivel doesn't move. You do have to lock the swivel down nice and tight. If you don't lock it down nice and tight with leverage, there's a chance of this moving, but as you can see, that's going nowhere. So I have a small bolt here. I'm going to cut it. Gets nice and tight in the jaws. You don't have to give much pressure here to get a nice secure fixing. That's good. So there it is all installed. As you can see, I've chopped off the excess bolt and it's sitting nicely on the workbench. Okay, so that's about it then for this video. So the vice is now installed and ready to go. I'm pretty impressed with it. I think it's great value for money. I like pretty much everything about it. The handle is quite thick and long, so it's not uncomfortable, and you don't need to put a lot of force on it to get a nice tight grip. The jaws are very grippy. They seem to grip with ease. I like the colour. I like the grey and then the orange that sets it off. The paintwork on the orange isn't great, but it's okay, and the grey paintwork is quite good, so I'm happy about that. I like the way it's got the 4.5 inch stamped into the front here, and the VEVOR branding just makes it look a bit unique and stand out. And it's also got the pipe vise as well, and it's also got the anvil, so it's got pretty much everything you would need in a small metalworking vise if you want to do DIY on the weekends, that sort of thing. And they also sell it in larger sizes too. So if you're interested in buying this, I'll leave my Amazon associate link down in the description box to this size and the other sizes available. And if you buy through my link, I'll receive a small commission at no extra cost to yourself, and that just helps the channel out. So if you did find this video useful, please remember to like and also consider subscribing for more DIY related videos. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.